Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Mantry, and this week I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And yeah, questions. Man, oh man, I wasn't expecting us to have very many this week because we actually cleared out our queue last week. Nope, we got like just as many, which is awesome. Thank you so much for like enjoying the podcast, writing into us. That's very cool.
Yeah, cool. That's the word I would use. I was looking forward to having a short podcast this week as well, because Mr. Tom had a little bout of insomnia last night and was up till like 3 o'clock, and then had to get up early because reasons. Oh, what were those reasons? Oh, yes, that terrible idea that I had 12, 9, and 6 years ago of having children. And guess what? I was just thinking to myself, fine. You know what? I'll power through. It'll be fine. Oh, I left this fan on. I'll power through. I'll be fine. It'll be great. You know?
Okay. Yep.
Because I don't have anything going on tomorrow morning. It'll be fine.
Yes.
5 minutes before I come into this room, my wife looks at me and goes, "Oh, yeah, I have to go get the physical for my new job. So for the insurance or whatever. So you're going to get up at like 6:30, 6:20 to go take the kids to school." I'm like, can't they walk? I mean, it's not that far. It's like a mile.
Why do you have
Maybe
to get
a mile
up
and a
that
half.
early for school? What's school require?
My kid's school starts at 7:35 and it ends at 1:35. It's awful. It is awful. And it's all because of busing. Because and they don't bus, but because other people bus, the buses have to be staggered enough so you can make the bus drivers, I don't know, stretch for all the different. So there's people that start at 7:35, people start at 8:35, and people start at 9:35 around here. There's a lot of schools.
Wow.
So
All right.
yes, we got a buttload of questions, and I was like, "What the hell?" When I saw the list, I'm like, I thought we were gonna have like 6, maybe 8. I figured 8 was probably a good number, and we would power through about an hour and 15 minutes. Boom, I'd be to bed. Bob's your uncle. Tom's a happy camper. Nope. We probably won't even get through all this nonsense today, which is great. I love that you guys are so involved in the podcast and that we can help you out. But I sometimes wish maybe you weren't so involved. It's like that thing at work where you're so busy, you're like, "Oh, I hate all my customers," but you're like happy because you're making money,
better than no customers.
Exactly. So I'm a member of a Facebook group, podcasters or whatever. I don't know how I don't know how that happened. Anyways, I see people posting about their I'm starting a brand new podcast and I've got like, 450 downloads a month. I'm like, month? It's how many of those are you? But it's really nice that we've got thousands and thousands of downloads and we're getting dozens of questions a week. So this is a podcast where we will answer your questions, sometimes begrudgingly, but we will answer your questions.
Don't say that. That's not true, folks. We love it. We love it. We love it.
I'm just a little tired and a little bitter right now. And my son was just like, "Daddy, I know your podcast starts like right now, but can you fix this thing that I just broke?" No, I can't fix it. Busy. You had all day.
It's gonna be a ranty one, folks.
It is. It's not called AV. Let's be nice to people. It's called AV Rant. Tom's angry. And that fan's on, it's making noise. And I know I'm going to have to get the noise out of this thing, and that's making me angry, too.
Well, I'm not hearing it over the microphone right now.
It's going to be there. I can see it in the recording.
Okay. Well, just noise canceling. It's not that.
Whatever. This is the podcast where we answer your AV and home theater questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing Rob at avrant.com, Tom at avrant.com, and question at avrant.com. You can ask. All 3 is the way to go, but if you only ask one, ask question, because that gets you on the list, which is ever growing and never ending. So we're happy about that. You can also go to www.avrant.com, leave a comment there, facebook.com/avrantpodcast. That's all one word. And you can hit us up on Twitter at First Reflect for Rob, at avrant_Tom for me, and at Austin TN Pond for our producer, Austin, who puts together our list. He also has his own podcast called We Watch Movies. It is a podcast that talks exclusively about the hairstyle of different political candidates and political figures. So that podcast has just exploded in the last year.
Yeah. Lots to do right now for that.
Lots to talk about. Hair on candidates. I don't know. Whatever.
We watch movies.
We do. I mean, they do. I don't. I mean, I watch movies too. But
right.
Yeah.
Listeners of the week.
I know, but I'm thinking about this stuff anyways. All right, so we do have listeners of the week this week. To become a listener of the week, all you have to do is find a way to support the podcast and let us know about it. One of the ways you can support the podcast is go to www.avrant.com and click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee. That gives you essentially a PayPal donation page, which you can use if you have a PayPal account, or if you don't, they'll take your credit card number and do all that. We have no access to any of that. All we do is see a little thing that pops up and says, "Ew, so-and-so gave you a donation." So this week we got donations from Andrew, Tyler, Mark, Ben, Justin, and Richard.
Wow, that is awesome. It seems that my shameless shilling over a couple of podcasts there ago has worked.
Andrew, as long as you can do it, because I can't shill. I can't shill myself. That's where I draw the line. I am not a self-promoter. I'm not. I'll promote you. Can't promote me.
All right, Andrew, Tyler, Mark, Ben, Justin, Richard, thank you all so much. And as I've been saying, if you've basically, I think everyone I've met through this podcast, I would say, I think everyone I've met through this podcast has been like a pretty reasonable, nice person. And so I think by simply saying, if you feel like we provided entertainment or information, or maybe both, and you're like, you know what, those guys are pretty good guys, they've given me like $1's worth of entertainment, I'm like, there you go. That's where that comes from. So it's very nice to see.
Yes, it is.
We appreciate it.
Every little bit helps. That goes to do all the hosting fees and all that stuff. And one of these days, once we explode even more than we already are, which we are getting bigger every single month, it'll go to pay some sort of salary for somebody around here. I haven't crunched numbers. I'm not sure I'm in the black yet as far as how much money I've pumped to this podcast over the years.
Right, from like all the years back when you were just paying out a bunch.
It will be next a week. This May, I think, is 9 years. So next May will be our 10th anniversary.
Wow.
It's a long time for a podcast.
Yeah.
Anyways, in the news, I found actually my librarian friend sent me a link to a NASA site, which has visions of the future, which are posters that depict different sort of celestial bodies in very retro sort of, I would call it Art Deco, Art Nouveau. I don't know what you call that stuff. Anyways, very cool posters. And I thought, you know what? If I was going to get some printed fabric to go on top of my panels, this is totally what I would do. I'd take my wife to this page and go, pick one. But the Mars one doesn't do it for me, but I do like it was Enceladus. I like Titan. I like Europa. Let's see here. This HD40307G, which is a super Earth. Experience the gravity of HD. That one looks cool. I love that one. The Kepler 16b is pretty cool.
So I mean, this says that you can download the poster-sized images for free.
It's free.
It's like, okay, yeah, I can't beat that.
It's free and it's downloaded, and you're not using it to make money, right?
No, I mean, like if it's just printing it on something that's going to be in your house, how would anyone ever know? So
that's all it is. That's the whole idea.
Cool.
The whole idea. I just love this. I'm going to download them all and just keep them someplace.
Yeah.
Just in case they decide to take them off. The Grand Tour one is pretty cool too, which shows like a bunch of different celestial bodies and like, I don't know, spacecrafts or something. I like that one.
All right, well, come to avrant.com, folks. We'll have the link for it in our show notes. That's where any of the stuff we talk about, videos, links, sometimes the products that we recommend, we try to link to them in the show notes at avrant.com. That's where you find that stuff.
I'm reading I just finally got to the bottom of this page. I just looked at the pictures. And it says... All right. Anyways, it doesn't say anything about. It said that there are some usage things, so you're gonna have to check that out.
Okay.
All right. Let's see here. What else is in the news? The HTC Vive virtual reality system will cost $800 and ship in April. Unlike the Oculus Rift, it comes with 2 controllers and 2 location sensors, so that you can actually walk around a real room and trip over your own crap.
Yeah, it does have a front-facing camera on the headset itself, so you can kind of do an augmented reality pass through the visual field in front of you that the camera's... I mean, think about that. You're putting on goggles on your head and then using a camera to see what's in front of you.
Seems counterintuitive. I don't know.
But yeah, their whole idea is that like Oculus, they don't really have a system for you to like physically get up and walk around anywhere. Whereas the Vive, they're like, that's what they want you to do. So I don't know. You're going to have some space in a room, but they got these 2 location sensors instead of just a camera. So you can actually move completely around in 3-dimensional space.
I don't know how worried I'd be if I was Oculus, because HTC products that I've tried have mostly been garbage. So.
Well, also, it still has a wire that goes from your head to your computer. And by the way,
how
800.
far are you going?
Yeah. Like anytime I've seen videos of people using it, you basically have to have a gaffer. Someone holding the wire for you to make sure you don't like get all tangled up.
Yeah, wireless transmission would be tough.
No kidding. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
They'll get there. They'll get there one day. Well, this is like the first.
5G. The problem with 5G, I was just reading into this the other day. The problem with 5G is range, right? It's fast. Like the higher speed you have of a wireless transmission, like 4G, 3G, whatever, the shorter the range. So 5G's problem is range.
You're talking like gigahertz, right? 5 gigahertz range. Yeah.
Well, like when we talk about the wireless networks that people use our cell phones.
Wi-Fi, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's no reason to think that we couldn't set something up, but we'll see what happens. Yeah. We'll see what happens with this. I think
this does not include the computer necessary to run it. This is the $800 is the headset, the 2 handheld controllers, and the 2 location sensors. So
I wouldn't assume anything else. Scott Wilkinson posted a nice chart on ABS forum to quickly see which TV support HDR, Dolby Vision, and Ultra HD Premium certification. So we'll have a link to that.
Yep. It's handy dandy because sometimes people are like, what supports what? Well, now it's in chart form, so it's easier to
Now you can be on ABS forums and people will say, did you read the chart? But they won't link you up to it.
Oh, the people who were complaining about the models that he didn't put on the chart. He's like, I'm waiting for confirmation from the manufacturers that they actually do 10-bit or that they actually do HDR, that they're actually full array local dimming. They're like, why don't you put it on the chart? I have it. It works. Just trust me. It's like, oh, ABS people.
Oh,
just chill out sometimes.
One of these days, your voice will change, AVS people, and you'll grow up to be a real person, and you'll have real responsibilities where you can move out of your parents' house and pay bills like the rest of us, and figure out that not having your TV on a chart really isn't as important as you seem to think it is.
But it's their
just
TV,
calm the hell down.
It's theirs. It's not on the chart, and they have it.
Mine does it, and you haven't put it on the list. This is an affront to me. I'm going to come to your house and stab you in the eye. Dude, you think you might want to calm down just a bit? It's a damn TV.
Oh, dear.
It's going to be a ranting one, people. Yamaha says that its DTS X firmware updates are coming in early March for the receivers and prepo. The YSP 5600 digital sound projector should get this update in late April. Hopefully by the time DTS gets it working right, they'll get it. That would
be nice. Yeah.
I have a feeling that's not the way it's going to work, though.
Denon and Marantz were the first. Yamaha is now the second. We're still waiting to hear from Onkyo/Integra and Pioneer as to when their updates are coming, but
they will be coming when they put out new receivers.
Should be Oh no, I mean they've had theirs that they said are getting the DTS-X update 5 firmware. It'll come. It'll come. Whether it'll work or not, who knows? But it'll come.
Yeah, well, it's not going to work at all. All right, one comment. I guess we have more than one comment.
There's one extra one that I added really late.
No, there's something in the new for this week thing too that I have to look like a comment. Okay. Anyways, Tom, not me, recently visited a Disney World. Dude, you were like 2 hours away from me. Why didn't you call or something or email me? I mean, I might have gone over there. Anyways, he recently visited Disney World and stayed in a villa. Well, you got that much money. No, he wanted to note that every room had speakers installed in the ceiling, including the theater area. And he sent pictures of this too. It was really interesting. In most cases, you could tell the sound was coming from overhead, but was surprised to find that the spring was still able to make the connection with dialogue from the center speaker, even though it was in ceiling as well. And this is, I've said this in the podcast so many times. Your brain is really good at lifting or lowering that dialogue to what's on the screen. The problem is when like the camera pans and suddenly the person who's talking is no longer on the screen and they pop up to the ceiling.
And also, like, if you were to close your eyes while watching, all of a sudden you'd be like, oh, that voice is actually coming from overhead. So yeah, the whole eye, brain, ear system definitely all works together, and our visual system can sometimes override what we're hearing to create auditory illusions.
All the time.
Yeah,
and your auditory system basically whatever makes sense is what you're going to experience. It's just like if you watch a fight scene and they're throwing punches and it looks totally real, and then you mute it and you're like, that dude is nowhere near that other dude. I mean, they're like,
that's right.
Not even, they're barely in the same room. There's like I could stand between where his fist is and where his face is and not get hit. But when you put the sound back on, it's clear that that dude totally got hit.
Yeah.
And it's simply because your brain's like, okay, well, there's sound. That must be the way it is, and it's the way you see it.
Yeah, Tom was like, oh, if he was designing it, he thinks, oh, maybe he would have used like home theater in a box style or something, smaller speakers and gone with wires. But I'm like, you know what? This whole putting all 5 speakers in the ceiling, it is so common in the custom installer world. And
it is.
I mean, they don't want to deal with anything, especially, I mean, really, they don't want the possibility of anyone even touching the speakers, right?
Exactly.
That's
I'm
another
thinking.
headache for them.
You don't want to have a sound bar in there or a couple of little satellite speakers, even if they're wall mounted, because some a-hole is going to try to rip them off the wall.
That's right.
So that's
they stick them all up in the ceiling.
Stick them in the ceiling. I totally agree with that. Well, I don't agree with it sonically, but from a business perspective, it makes sense. All right, for questions of this week, we got Andrew.
Oh, I just wanted to mention Joseph on Facebook. That was a late addition. Sorry about that, Tom. But I know I sent an updated one like super late, which there's no chance he would have gotten. But yeah, just over on Facebook, he was over on the Synergistic Research Facebook page. Those were those guys who had those cables with the the little red and blue add-on little dealies that you would like screw in to change the sound.
Oh, right. Yes.
And they had their like power cords that also have like little changey fusey thingy on them that I can almost guarantee do absolutely nothing. But yeah, so Joseph was like, hey, these little fuse things that you're claiming that you plug into your cables to change the sound. He's like, do you have any data to actually show that like what they do, like measurements or whatever? And they they came back to him and basically said they're going to ban him. Told him flat out to go away.
Of course they did.
For insulting their products and their customers by asking for this data. And they said, we do have the measurement. We haven't released it yet. It's like, yeah, sure you do. So
you got banned for asking for something that you actually have?
Threatened to ban him. They're like, oh yeah, your response is, how should we put this? Special. You're just a troll.
That's what his response was.
No, that was their response to
They called him a troll?
They called him a troll for asking for the data to back up their claims.
That's of course they're a troll. I mean, they don't need data. Don't be ridiculous.
We have people who swear they can hear the difference. That's all the data they need.
That's all the data they need. And
classy.
Their dollars.
Stay classy, Synergistic.
Andrew's got a theater he's building and a bunch of questions about it. So here we go. He's in the process of building his first dedicated home theater from scratch and needs a little help. This room is a basement, 19.5 by 10.5 by 7, with cinder block walls on 3 sides. The other side is paper mache. Or what? What is the other side?
I'm assuming it's like an interior wall that he might be constructing.
Okay. So
that's just the assumption, though.
I'm going with paper mache. Anyways, he'd like to fit 2 rows of seats if possible. Place in the main row. 2/3 room length from the screen would be 13 feet, leaving only 5.5 feet for the second row. Is that enough room? Quality is really only concerned for the main row. If quality is only concerned for the main row, then that is plenty of room. Because what you will do is put that last row of seats on the back wall.
But you don't have to be 2/3. 3/5 also works totally fine.
Whatever, dude. And you talk about a difference of like a foot in a room that's 10. If he's doing that, well, actually, if he's doing that almost 20 foot long, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so it's going to 11.5 feet now instead of 13 feet. Which, I mean, the nice thing there is you do want your second row of seats at least 5.5 feet behind the first row of seats. That's just so if someone is walking by or they're going to recline, you're not going to literally have someone's feet on top of someone's head. Yeah. If there are people in both the first and second row, you want at least 5.5 feet between the 2 rows. 6 feet is kind of nice, but you don't have to have it. But if you're 11.5 feet plus 5.5 feet, now you're at 17 feet. Now you got a couple of feet behind that back row still left. That's really nice. And you're 3/5 of the length of the room in. And honestly, being 11.5 feet away from your screen is easier in a number of other ways too, because now you don't need as large a screen. And I don't think he's going acoustically transparent with a false wall, which would eat up more space. So now you might have room for a center speaker below that projection screen instead of it being on the floor.
And that's fine, but I still think you can put that second row on the back wall.
Right against the wall. No, but where's he going to put a second sub, though? You want some space behind those back seats.
Put that in the corner and just scooch it in. I mean, what's that second row for? That's for people you don't like. That's who's the children sit in the back row. Come on.
Could be. Anyway, Andrew, my recommendation is to work it out to 3/5, which is just a hair over 11.5 feet from eyes to screen for that first row. And I think that will work out nicely.
So, given the length of the room, will 2 overhead speakers be enough for a decent Atmos experience, or will he need 4? If he will need 4, how should the 2 he currently has placed Which ones does he currently have
That he
placed?
currently has. He hasn't placed them yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. How should the two he currently has be placed to accommodate adding a second pair in the future?
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is a tricky one.
Yeah, so what we're saying normally is surround backs or
Yep.
top heights, one or the other.
Rear heights. Yeah.
Rear heights.
Either surround backs or rear heights. They end up being quite redundant with one another, so one or the other.
So top middles and top fronts?
Well,
I would go with top middles first. Seems to me.
yeah, I mean, so the issue here is he's saying really it's that front row of seats that he cares about most.
Right.
He doesn't so much care about the back row of seats.
Yeah.
So let's say he goes with traditional 7 speakers, meaning he has surround backs back there.
Yeah.
So now the question is, do you go with top rears plus top fronts, or do you go with top middles plus front heights? Now, if what you really care about is that one front row, and given that if you installed top rears, they'd either be in between your 2 rows, right?
Yeah.
Or they'd be far enough back that there's almost no point in having them because you have surround backs.
7.5 foot row, I think it's a 7 foot tall room, so it's not going to be
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that you keep your 7 traditional speakers, you install top middles.
Yeah.
That'll sound really good right now, right away. And then if you want to add front heights in the future, you have the option to do so. That's the way I would go. You know, your rear row of seats won't quite be getting the overhead of like the top middles will sound like top fronts to them. But you'll have the surround backs and you'll have the top middles. I think that's the way to go in this particular scenario. Because coming up later, we have a question from Byron talking about speaker placement too. And you know, I've got some thoughts on it. It all depends on your room size, the number of rows of seats, how far you are from that back wall. There, you know, things to sort of
don't you think
consider.
just in general top middles, if you're only going to have one, it should be top middles?
I do, yeah. It was something I didn't mention last week in that Deadpool experience when I went and saw it there. It was in an Atmos theater where I saw it, and normally I buy my tickets in advance and I'm able to sit like more or less, you know, 2/3 from the screen and in the middle. So I'm right supposedly what's the money seat normally, but I got these tickets a little bit late and I ended up shifted over to the left. So I was actually directly under the left row of overhead speakers in this Atmos theater. I was actually like, oh, you know what? I hear them more clearly now that I'm directly under them.
Gee, who would have guessed? Look at that. Speakers are directional. Rob learned something today.
So honestly, yeah, if what you care about in particular is one row, I'd put a pair of speakers directly over that row of or that row of seats. So if it's the front row, top middles directly over them. That's what I'd go for here. And then, yeah, you can add front heights later if you want to.
Yeah. All right. What height should surrounds or surround backs be mounted? And should he use this Klipsch RS42 bipole speakers as surrounds or surround backs? Well, first, the second part of the questions, if you're gonna have bipoles, you don't want them as surround backs. You want them as surrounds. Yeah. So that's fine.
And again, since you really only care about that front row primarily, I'd have them, you know, your bipole speakers on the side walls. Either you don't have to be directly 90 degrees to the left and right of your front row, but you're more or less considering that front row as your primary row. So, you know, maybe just slightly back of them, which means if you're sitting in the rear row, yes, your side surround effects will be coming from slightly in front of you, but he's made it very clear the front row is what he cares about most. So to the sides, maybe
only people in timeout get the back row. That's
right.
what it is. And okay, so Dolby Atmos, and we're going to answer this question again, I think later on this thing. I'm not really sure. Anyways, I saw this. Dolby Atmos suggests that they have always been suggesting that all these speakers be at ear height. First of all, that's a filthy, filthy lie. They have never suggested that, and no one has ever suggested that surrounds and surround backs be at ear height. No one's ever suggested it, and no one ever will. They are now saying that that's, oh yeah, we've been saying that for years. Like, no, you haven't. Shut up, liars. But so yes, so you're gonna what was the heights of the surrounds back be? A little bit behind you and a couple feet up.
Yep. The tweeters. Get the tweeters a couple feet above your seated ear height. I mean, basically, like we've been saying, you want to have a clear line of sight so that the left side surround speaker has a clear line of sight to the person sitting on the right side of the theater.
If you have to pick one.
Yeah, the tweeter. Yeah, tweeter. Yeah. So that usually that means a couple of feet above your head when you're sitting down. And same, you know, if you're going to have that second row on a bit of a riser, then make sure that the surround back speakers, which will be behind that second row, make sure they're high enough that they can clear the heads of that back row
And
to
that's
have a clear
important,
line
dude.
of sight to the front.
That might on a 7-foot ceiling. You may be they
Yeah,
may
that's
be
true.
surround. I mean, rear heights.
Rear
at
heights,
that
pretty
point.
much, yeah.
Yeah.
Which once again says, why would you need rear heights or top rears if your
Yeah.
surround backs are elevated like that, which they should be. And the thing is, we're not the only ones saying this. Like THX, who doesn't really have a dog in this fight, in that it's not their format, but they've been testing it. They're like, nah, keep them elevated, because otherwise you just don't get you don't hear it properly if you're sitting on one side of the seats or the other, So
I don't know why they
get the clear line of sight.
Oh yeah, they're all they're all on speaker stands around you. No, they're not. No one does that. All right. Should the surround backs be in line with the front mains? Dolby seems to say no. What do we say? Dolby does not say no. Dolby says that they're right in line with the mains.
That's right.
That's what they've been saying. Other people say no. Okay.
Yeah, including THX previously, no longer, right? They've changed. Yeah. THX has changed their recommendation to line up with Dolby's, which is that, you've got your front, left, and right speakers there, however far apart they are, to create nice imaging up front and be on either side of your screen. And then your overhead speakers are the same distance apart from left to right as your front, left, right speakers. Your surround back speakers are the same distance apart.
Your surround, I mean, your height and your backs and your mains, or think of them, they're all in like an arc.
Yeah, they're creating a line from the back of the theater to the front of the theater, or vice versa.
Yeah. So I already said that one. Is there any point in using his Energy EW 100 sub, or is it too mismatched with the SVS PB 2000? It is too mismatched.
Yeah, that's a mismatch. That's a real mismatch.
I think it's like 29. I think it rolls off at 29 or something. I looked it up. It's not. I think it's got like a 200-watt amp in it or something like that. Yeah, that's not gonna do it, dude.
Yeah, like it's not like this room is huge.
Right.
You don't even need the 2000 series from the point of view of sheer output.
Yeah, you could actually totally get away with a 1000 for sure.
You could, but I mean the 2000 does sound a bit nicer, so I have zero problems with that.
I got no problem. I'm just saying that you could save a little bit of money and go with.
But you could definitely go with the SB 2000.
That's the other thing I would suggest
a pair
too.
Of those.
Yeah, get the pair of the smaller ones, the SBs, the sealed boxes, because you're not going to lose that much of extension, and it's going to be. You're not going to believe how much smaller it is than that PB. Okay?
I know.
The PB is freaking huge,
and it's less expensive.
Because they're actually charging you for the fact that they're not using as much MDF
and the shipping.
Yeah, do yourself a favor here, buddy, and build yourself a cardboard box the shape of the PB and the shape of the SB, and thank us later when you buy the SB.
Yeah, I think if you went for a pair of SB 2000s in this room, you would be thrilled with the performance.
I totally agree. I usually go with the ported box because of the extra output and the whatever, but you totally don't need it. No. With a viewing distance of 13 feet or 11 and a half, as things may be, what screen size should he look for? What should the game be? And any budget-friendly recommendations? The room is fully light controlled. Okay, I always say this, and Rob doesn't always necessarily agree with me, but every installer, every calibrator I've talked to kind of agrees that a gain of 1.2 is sort of like the perfect
balance between
why
getting
a little bit extra light output. And because I've heard you disagree with that. Shut up.
What have I
done? You disagree with that? You've said, oh no, I would get this. No, 1.2. So so I usually just stick with the 1.2. Now I didn't do the screen. I get lazy in my old age, and Rob will do the screens. He probably already knows the screen size calculations anyways, so I don't bother doing it. But with the room fully light controlled, you might be thinking to yourself, well, can I get a 1.0 gain? You absolutely can.
Sure.
Absolutely. But then again, if your room is fully light controlled, then when it turns to black and even it's a 1.2 gain, the 0.2 that it's magnifying, well, if there's nothing there, it's not magnifying any of that. So you're gonna have to worry about it. So that's why I would say with 1.2.
Yeah, so I mean, I was sort of basing this off of the suggestion I had, which was 3/5 of the room length instead of 2/3. That gets you a little closer, 11.5 feet or so. Now it depends a little bit on how wide you want that experience to be. Again, we're going to recommend going with a 16:9 aspect ratio screen.
It's just easier.
It really is. And And since you have 2 rows of seats, if you're finding that you're watching television and you're like, this is actually a little bit too large for viewing HD TV, you go sit in your back row. And voila, you've just created like a 30 or 32 degree field of view, exactly like what SMPTE would recommend, just by you moving to the back row of seats.
Tell you what, man. I mean, I sit like 8 feet from a 80-inch screen. If that, I might even sit closer than that. I'd have to take the measurement out. And I've never had my wife, and my wife would be the one to complain about it. She's never gone, it's too big. She's never said that, which is I know I hate using my wife as an example, but she's sort of Luddite about these things. She doesn't really hear the difference between one sub or one speaker or another. She didn't notice when I put in different speakers in here. She never notices that stuff. But she would complain if it was too big, but she doesn't. So, and I like a nice big screen, and
for movies it's darn nice to be immersed.
Even HDTV, it doesn't. I think it just works so much better to have that nice big screen. Go on.
So I mean, what we're really concerned with now, if we've decided we're going to go with a 16:9 screen, we're concerned with the width of the screen more so than the diagonal. I mean, one will correspond to the other, but if you're looking for basically a 45-degree field of view, so, from left to right, you're filling up 45 degrees. That turns out really nice. It's also very convenient for where your speakers are going to go, because they should be about 45 degrees apart as well, between 45 and 60 degrees apart. So you can put your left and right speakers on either side of this screen, and it'll all work out very nicely. So for an 11.5-foot viewing distance, you basically want a 130-inch diagonal screen that's 120 inches wide. That works out quite nicely. Now, that's not necessarily a standard screen size for some of these. Like he was looking for something that cost a little less, which we're going to recommend Silver Ticket.
Right.
Because Silver Ticket has very nice fixed frame screens at very affordable prices. Now, their white screen is 1.1 gain.
Close enough.
Okay, given the price, we're not going to worry about that whatsoever.
You have that off the top of your head.
Well, so they have 120-inch or they have 135-inch.
Right.
Those are the standard sizes. If you go with the 135, that's pretty nice. There's one consideration, which is the height that he has. So that might make things a little bit squishy at that size.
Right.
But for that, that's let's see here. How much is the price for the 135 inches? $340 for a 135-inch screen. Nothing. So I would take a gander at your height though, because with only a 7-foot ceiling height, I would have this thing basically pressed right up against the ceiling. That's going to be totally fine for your CinemaScope movies, and when things expand to IMAX, you're watching HDTV. It's fine to have the image right up to the ceiling with only a 7-foot ceiling, but that only gives you about 18 inches below the screen. Right. So your center speaker is going to be on the low side. That is a consideration. So get in touch with them, because I do believe they actually are able to make custom screen sizes. They'll charge you for the next size up. So like if you got a 130-inch screen, they charge you the same price as a 135.
That'd be totally worth it, dude, so that you don't have to worry. I mean, you're going to pay that and trying to get a custom stand for your center channel, or however you're going to have to deal with the whole center channel thing. So,
but I mean, your other option is to sit 11 feet away and go with a 120-inch screen, and you've basically solved the issue.
Yeah, there you go. So there's your option.
So that's, the 120-inch screen, I got to say, with a 7-foot ceiling height, it actually kind of fits a little nicer.
Yeah.
It does. So, you'd still be close to a 45-degree viewing angle with a 120-inch screen. Play with it a little bit, maybe scoot your seat forward like 5 inches, and all of a sudden 120 inches looks perfect. So I'm kind of leaning towards that, to be honest.
Yeah. Either way, I don't know that you're going to know there's that much of a difference between 5 inches and not. Whatever. All right. Any recommendations for a sub $1,500 projector? Well, there's lots of $1,000 projectors out there these days, especially older and used ones, or refurb units.
Yeah. It's a little bit tricky, because $1,500 is right like in between.
Right.
There's like the $1,000 projectors, which are going to be the BenQs that we'll recommend all day, like the HT3050 or the HT2050, in fact, which are so darn similar. Why not pay less for the 2050 and just tweak it a little bit with a setup disc, because they basically end up the same for like $200 less. And then at the $2,000 level, you've got like the Epson 5030 UB, which is a fantastic projector. And if you have full light control like you do, it would be kind of nice to have those deeper, darker black levels.
You know what I'm going to suggest, dude? This is what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to suggest you get the SB1000 so the PB2000s, and you're going to take that monetary savings and you're going to dump it into your projector budget until you get to 2000s, and you're going to get the Epson. That's what you're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, the BenQ does have the HT4050, which actually is like $1,400 and is a little bit more refined than their 2050 or 3050, but it still doesn't have the black levels of that Epson 5030 UB. I would try to splurge for the Epson 5030 UB. I think it's worth it. You don't need like one of Epson's super high light output models because the projector's not going to be that far away. If you go with the 120-inch screen, like I'm sort of recommending, you don't need the crazy high light output to fill that. So, Epson does have like their 3500. I certainly know people are very happy with that model, but yet again, the 5030 is still that much deeper black levels. And it's $2,000 brand new, and I'll bet you can find it refurbished somewhere.
Right.
For like just a hair.
Lastly, this drywall is framed a half-inch from the block walls. That's the way mine is as well. I've got block walls, 3 of my rooms. Too.
Oh, sorry. On the last one, he this was from the email. He wanted to know how far away he should plan for the projector to be mounted from the screen.
Oh, okay.
So basically, I looked through all the ones that I mentioned. So the HT2050 from BenQ, the HT4050 from BenQ, the Epson 3500, or the Epson 5030. If you plan on the projector's lens, keep in mind we're talking about the lens, the front of the projector. If you plan on having that about 14 to 15 feet away from the screen, which should fit in his theater, you could have it in between your 2 rows of seats, in other words, right? If you get it there, that distance will pretty much work for any of those projectors.
There you go.
For the screen size. So plan on about 14 feet.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, this drywall is framed a half-inch from the block walls. You think of filling it with Roxol Safe and Sound. Would that be enough soundproofing? I don't know that it's going to actually soundproof anything.
It deadens the interior of the
spray foam is probably outside the budget. With adding a second layer of drywall with green glue make a noticeable difference? Any other options we would advise? It seems like if he's worried about the soundproofing, I guess he's worried about it to the outside of the house, because those are going to be exterior walls, right? Is that
they are exterior walls? Yeah, I'm guessing the real fear is sound going into those exterior walls and up to the floor above.
That's still going to happen, no matter how much rock wall, how much stuff you put in there, because it's going to travel through through whatever. If the drywall is connected to the whatever the furring strips they use, which are connected to the wall, it's all solid, so it's going to go straight through. So maybe that green glue might make more of a difference than.
Yeah, it's very tough to say because with exterior walls, obviously there's less of a concern for soundproofing because who cares if the basement dirt outside the foundation hears some sound, right? So I'd be more concerned on those exterior walls because he said 3 of the walls are exterior walls. I'd be more concerned there with just making sure everything is sealed so that you don't have a flanking path for the noise to get into that drywall and up to the upstairs floor. I'd be more concerned with having all of those walls sealed. For the one wall that you'll be constructing, that wall I might put 2 layers of drywall with green glue in between so that, sound transmission from whatever's on the other side of that wall in the other part of your basement, that has soundproofing going that way. But for the exterior walls, I don't really think it's worth the expense, honestly.
I didn't put anything in mine.
Yeah.
When I built this wall in here, there was sort of a bookshelf, that built-in bookshelf on the other side of where this wall was. So this wall actually moved out into halfway into that bookshelf. So that bookshelf got torn down, and there was like this big, huge space. And the guys were like, "Oh yeah, just don't worry about that. We'll put some drywall over it." I'm like, "Do not seal that up yet." And I ran over to Home Depot and I bought like all of the insulation. I just shoved everything I could in there, like as tight as I could. I just got, not as tight as I could.
Shouldn't pack in insulation.
I didn't pack it in, but I just kept sticking it in there and, sliding it in until it stopped, because, they had already put the drywall on the outside and there was just this little slot there that they were about to seal up. I'm like, oh, I got to fill that up. And I'm convinced that alone has made a huge difference in making sure my wife doesn't bug me about how loud the theater is most of the time.
Oh yeah, if you had a big cavity in there, there's
Oh,
no
yeah.
way that. Yeah, so what I would focus on for those exterior walls, one, if you're not going to use any spray foam, make sure you got a vapor barrier, because Lord Almighty, you do not want to not have a vapor barrier in a basement or any exterior wall for that matter. So you got to make sure you have your vapor barrier, and then acoustic sealant is your friend in those exterior walls. Seal everything up so that, you know, air can't freely move through any little gaps. That includes all around electrical outlets and all that kind of stuff, but, you know, in between the seams of your drywall that you will be putting up. So seal it up, but don't worry about a second layer plus green glue on those exterior walls. Maybe for the one interior wall, worry about it there.
All right, Dan. Finally got finished with whatever that other dude's name was. I already forgot, like 13 questions later. Dan has a basement theater area which is open to the rest of the basement. Closing off the theater isn't an option. Is this the one with it actually looks really nice?
It looks very nice, and it's, I guess you could call it sort of an L-shaped room, more or less.
I can't quite get this room. Like, I don't know why it is that it's like I need a drawing.
Yeah, it's odd. It's oddly shaped.
And the pictures aren't helping me.
Yeah, just imagine that you have a fairly large basement size room that isn't a perfect rectangle. It's a little bit L-shaped. And then to the left side, if you just divide the room sort of in half, the left side is his theater area. And then the right side has some more seating and what looks like, what is that, like a poker table or something in there?
There is it looks like a pool table, like a, well, that might be a poker table. You know what? Yeah. I think you're right. It is a poker table. Yes, okay. Those are drink holders. I see it.
Yeah.
There's a popcorn maker in there. They've got 2 rows of seats, one on a riser, but that's all shoved to the left side of the theater.
Right.
And there's a sub in an alcove with all the gear. The sub's at the bottom and the gear's on the top, and all the gear sitting on glass shelves.
So the one subwoofer right now is sort of it's close to the front left corner of the entire space.
Of the entire space. That's right. Yeah. And some of these pictures are awfully hard to see, to be honest with you. And he's got one of those star ceilings because...
Yep. It looks nice, though, and that nice big screen up front, which I'm assuming is acoustically transparent, sure looks like it.
It does. I hope. I don't see any speakers anywhere. There's a little cooler. Oh, there's a beer kegger thingy in the back, a little cooler, it looks like, with a keg thing on top.
That's actually like the front right corner of the room.
Is that the front right corner?
That's where it is, yep.
Oh, I'm very confused by this whole thing. I'll be honest with you. Anyways, I'm getting lost in these pictures. Where am I? Yep. I don't care anymore. What is that? I don't know what that is. Is that a speaker? No, I don't get it. Anyways, let's go back to the question.
Yes.
His basement theater, which is open to the rest of the basement, closing off the theater isn't the option. He often hosts groups of up to 20 or so people for movie nights and for viewing parties for airing the shows. Airing of shows like The Walking Dead and The Game of Thrones. Is there only 4 seats in that theater, though?
Oh, no, there's clearly more. Well, yeah, I guess there's 2 love seats plus like a futon plus like a little lounge chair.
Oh, yeah, off to the side. The futon is off to the side. I see it. Yeah, so
I'm assuming he can
but
bring
in the main theater area, there's basically 2 love seats. And then off the right side where you think that you don't like people because they're sitting in the back wall. These people, they really don't like. They're sitting on the futon in the very, very back with a Spider-Man poster above them. I can't really tell. All right. He's mostly happy, but is looking to upgrade the audio. One thing he's considering is adding a second subwoofer to pair with his PB Stratus.
It's a PSB, actually.
Yeah. PSB. I was wondering why I was getting weird responses. PSB Sonic 7s, and while it shakes the house, it can be a bit muddy at times. Eventually replacing the sub. He's eventually thinking of replacing that sub as well. Wouldn't even the SVS cylinder subs pair well with the subsonic?
Right. So this is it's a 15-inch sealed 330 watt sub. It has a claimed frequency response down to -3 dB at 22 hertz. Yeah, that's what it's claiming. It's about an 18-inch cube, roughly. I mean, it's not actually a cube, but more or less that's the sort of volume that it is. So it's a fairly decently sized sealed 15-inch driver. Moderate output, as far as wattage goes. So yeah, for this size of room, it's probably just okay.
Yeah,
like maybe the reason you're hearing some distortion is it's kind of reaching its upper limits.
I would think so, and I'm also, you've got that thing placed in that little alcove, so you're getting a lot of weird boundary reinforcement.
Could you actually stuff that alcove with some like insulation of some sort?
I don't know, dude. He doesn't have a whole lot of room left in that thing, does he?
Doesn't really, but I mean, just around where the sub is, could you maybe just stuff insulation around it? It would help a little.
Yeah, I guess there is some room on the left and the right. The other thing is that he's got it inside this alcove and all these glass shelves above it, which
correct. Yeah.
kind of makes me wondering if that's part of it. Makes me wonder. I'm wondering what I'm saying. If that's part of it. The muddiness is almost certainly because you're getting, bouncing around the room, and some of these waves are interacting. So a second sub will help with that for sure. If this frequency claim is right, the cylinder subs. Well, first of all, the cylinder sub's going to do fine. That he doesn't really say how big this room is, but it doesn't look that big. So I'm thinking the cylinder subs would be just fine to be in this room. Now, whether or not it pairs well with that subsonic remains to be seen.
Yeah,
but if honestly, you're going to get a second SVS cylinder sub, you're not going to put it in that little alcove. So why don't you take that sub out and put it where you're going to put the other one, and let's do that right now, because I don't like it in there. I think that that's not helping your sound.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky. I mean, honestly, even like the PC 2000, I would think could match up quite well with this Subsonic 7, just in terms of extension and output. It actually extends deeper than the Subsonic 7 does, most likely. And as far as output goes, I would think that the PC 2000 can probably play even louder than this one. So, I mean, that would match up fine. Yeah.
I would put because he's about to ask about placement, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would take that sub or whatever sub you're going to do and put it in the front left corner next to your screen, close to your screen.
Front left corner. I mean, it's fairly close to there already.
It is fairly close, but I think for right now, just take it out and put in that. I mean,
I had a slightly different idea.
Well, and then you take, because in this back right corner is that chair.
Yeah.
Right. Scoot the chair out. Put the cylinder sub right there.
So diagonally opposite corners.
Diagonally opposite corners.
Yeah, is what Tom suggested. I had one slight other idea, which is he does have a space to the right of his riser. So you're looking at the seats. The whole seating area is all pushed over to the left side of this room. So to the right of the riser and to the right of the screen is basically the middle of this room, front and back.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Between his little futon couch.
Yeah, between the futon couch and the riser that's holding the back row of seats, there's a space that could easily hold a cylinder sub standing up nice there.
And then he would put it like right next to the screen or on the other side of that, because it looks like there's a little wall there or something.
Yeah, but like just to the right of the screen, another cylinder sub, if he's going to end up replacing that Subsonic 7 at some point anyway. He's got some distance there between the right side of his screen.
It's a little corner there, right next to that screen. I'm thinking he's sticking in that little corner back there, next to his poker table thing.
Exactly. Yeah, standing up there, you got a nice cylinder standing up at the front of your room.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, because I would like to avoid having the sub in that alcove too.
Yes,
that's my thinking.
We are in agreement with the alcove not being the best placement for this thing. Plus, you can put more gear in there, dude. Like I don't know, something.
Giant amp for no reason.
A ginormous amp. It doesn't even have to work. Just see if he was able to ship you one with lights that light up. That's it. What is that? It's a monoblock. What's it powering? You don't want to know. That's the answer.
My voice of God speaker, the one speaker overhead. That's all it's doing.
All right. When he built the theater, he built up in curtain tracks on each side of the screen to isolate the theater during a movie watching without a crowd. He hasn't gotten the curtains yet, but is working with a local drapery shop on getting some made from heavy black velvet. What are our opinions of this idea?
Well, it's going to mess up your auto setup calibration, whether the curtain is open or closed, a little bit.
I don't think the bass is going to care that there's a big screen right there.
The bass isn't going to care too much.
Bass is not going to care too much about that. So, yeah, you're going to have to. What you're going to want is two different settings.
You might see the curtain move sometimes if you have enough bass going on.
If you get two SVSs, you probably will.
You can see some
if you
waving.
place them where we're telling you to place them, which is basically right there next to that curtain. Yeah. So don't worry that your subs are on the outside or the inside of that curtain is what I'm saying.
Yeah, the bass will go through that pretty darn easy.
But yes, Rob's right. If your tweeters, the high frequency information is going to easily bounce off of this sort of curtain, or it'll be deadened by it, or be affected by it. So you're going to want to have two calibration files for your auto setup. You're going to have one that is your curtain open and one curtain closed.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't care.
Or you could just say, which one do I care about more? And that's the one you leave it with. And The other situation, you just live with however it sounds.
Dude, this guy built this room. There's no way he's not going to have 2 calibrations. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's not.
I mean, could he go with semi-acoustically transparent curtains so that visually the thing is closed off, but acoustically it isn't? I don't know if that would be even worth it.
I don't. So he's going to hang down their speaker grill fabric. It's just going to wave in the breeze anytime somebody sneezes.
That's true. You do want something a little.
You would have to
I suppose.
weight it down with weights along the bottom or something. That's not. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's fine. That's if you want to have a curtain, have a curtain.
Yeah.
Let me see. I don't think. Oh, so he asked what are our opinions of this idea. But we think it's not a bad idea. It's not a good idea. It's just fine. And I think it's. I don't know that you need it. If you're the only people in there, why do you need it? Because it's sonically, it's just going to create more issues, and logistically, there ain't nobody else in there. So who cares?
I wonder if maybe he has a little.
I
wonder if he has. Yeah, I was wondering if he has a little bit of light on the right side of that room or something, and he's like, "Hey,
yeah, that's what you're trying to block
really
out.
black it out." Yeah.
It seems like it would be cheaper just to figure out
turn off the light.
Turn off that light. Just unscrew the bulb. Anyways, he'd like to address his living room setup as well. All right, dude. Okay. He bought a Vizio M70C3 to replace his LG Infinia 60 plasma 60-inch plasma. When some of the HDMI outputs went out recently, he's happy with the picture, at least as happy as he can be moving from a plasma to LCD. However, he has an annoying problem. He uses the TV's Netflix app in order to use HDMI ARC, which is audio return channel, to get the audio out to the receiver. He had to enable CEC on his Pioneer.
Yep.
But now, whenever he powers on the TV, it turns on the receiver and automatically switches the receiver to a TV HDMI input, which no source is connected to. His DVR is connected to the DB whatever input, forcing him to manually switch back to the DVR input every time he turns on the TV, which is annoying to say the least. Is there any way to stop this and still have ARC work properly? Is there another way to get Netflix audio out to the TV? Optical cable.
Yes.
Just connect an optical cable from your TV.
That is the simplest, to be honest.
That is the simplest. Turn off HDMI-CEC, plug in an optical cable, bada bing, bada boom, you're done.
Yeah.
That
really is the easiest one. I mean, there's a couple of workarounds if you're bound and determined to have nothing but one HDMI cable going from your AV receiver to your TV.
Wrap the optical cable around the HDMI cable. It looked like one really fancy cable.
I mean, so the one solution is you have something like a Harmony remote or, one of the smart remote apps or something like that, and just add it into the activity that you realize when you turn on the TV, your AV receiver is going to power on and it's going to go to this input, and therefore you just make that part of your activity set up so that when you press the button to watch TV, you at the end of it say, hey, switch over to this correct input. Because
put in delay, switch the input.
Now, the other one is I wasn't able to figure this out quickly enough in time for this podcast, because some AV receivers give you some options underneath that HDMI control or HDMI-CEC section. Sometimes all they have is on or off, and I'm not sure what it is. But sometimes they do give you the option of what happens with HDMI-CEC. Like some of them let you say, have HDMI-CEC, but don't power on. Don't do stuff with power. If that's the case, you could make this work, because you could say, okay, have HDMI-CEC, but when the TV turns on, do not automatically turn on the AV receiver.
I'm guessing that's not what he's got, though, because he probably would have figured that out by now.
It's a little bit unusual for that to be, but it'd be worth double checking your manual and checking the settings and seeing if that's an option. But honestly, what Tom said, optical cable by far the easiest solution to this. Yeah. And just turn off ARC and CEC.
Robert thanked us for discussing his DVD or DVD audio player settings. Since his Pioneer BDP 450 has 2 HDMI outputs, he was hoping he could use one to connect. He was hoping he could connect one of the HDMI outputs directly to his TV, while using the second output to connect to his AV receiver. That way, if he ever wanted to watch something using just the TV speakers and not his full surround sound system, he'd be able to. However, connecting things that way seems to limit DVD to only 2 channels once again. He also ran into a situation where the options to switch between PCM and bitstream output were grayed out. He really just wants to be able to hear DVD discs and SACD discs in 5.1 while still being able to easily play movies using either surround sound or just his TV. any ideas. Which receiver does he have?
He has a Pioneer VSX824, and I did look through the manual.
Does it have HDMI through?
It does. It
There
has
you go. That's
standby pass-through.
Standby pass-through. That's what you're looking for, buddy. Standby pass-through. You don't even power on the receiver.
That's correct.
Just keep it off. And it will
I wanted to address why this was happening, because on that BDP 450 DVD audio player that he has, it does have the 2 HDMI outputs, and it has the options of setting it to dual output, which means it sends video and audio to both HDMI outputs. Separate output, which sends video to the main HDMI output and audio only to the second HDMI output. Or what they call pure audio, which only sends audio. Doesn't send any video.
Why on God's green earth would you have that?
People
I'm
and their
sure there's somebody out there who is like, yes, I have been looking for this.
The video circuitry is active. It's messing up my digital audio somehow.
The video ones and zeros are messing up my audio ones and zeros. We must not have them in the same cable. Must not be happening.
But it says right in the manual for the BDP 450 that if you connect it, like it's giving the example of connecting it to 2 televisions, right? So let's say you connected the one player to 2 TVs. It says whatever is being sent out must be compatible with both displays. So if you had one 720p TV and one 1080p TV, you would have to send out 720p. Right, because it has to be compatible with both. And that goes for the audio, which explains why when he was using both HDMI outputs, he would have to set it to the dual output if he wants to be able to use the TV speakers. And the TV speakers, they can't handle 5.1 PCM over an HDMI connection. They can only handle 2-channel PCM, and both must be identical. So that's why it was limiting you to 2-channel. It's also why it was graying out the option between PCM and bitstream, because you can't send the bitstream to the TV. The TV doesn't understand the bitstream, whereas your AV receiver does. So the real only solution here is one HDMI cable from your player to your AV receiver, and then use your AV receiver's standby pass-through option, which is explained in the manual. That will allow you to listen on the TV speakers without the AV receiver having been turned on, and one source is just being passed through.
There you go.
Yeah.
Byron read the Audioholics DTS X review. A big conclusion they drew was the universal setup for Dolby Atmos Oro 3D and DTS X was using standard 7.1. They really meant 7.2, and adding front and rear heights, while the experts were saying that it makes sense to use top fronts and top middles and pass on top rears. That's
THX. Yeah.
Who is that's the experts were
the
saying
experts
that?
Are THX. Yeah.
What do we think, in particular you, because you've actually heard that, I mean, you have this in your theater, I guess. Do you have Atmos?
Yeah, I got Atmos. I'm still waiting for my DTS-X update because I have the Rants. It's coming.
So it's just, now, it depends on the size of your theater.
It does.
And
how many rows of seats you got.
How many rows of seats, your theater, how big it is, that sort of thing. So if you just look at the angles, if your theater is small, like we talked about before, with our 7-foot theater, and you've got a second row of seats and they're high, and you want your surround backs to be high enough that you can get a clear line of sight to the people in the front row, they're practically top rears or rear heights already.
Exactly.
They really are. So it doesn't make any sense to have rear heights along with them. You're putting speakers directly next to speakers.
Yeah. To me, it's really hard to ever justify surround backs and rear heights. The one scenario would be, let's say you went with the maximum elevation angle for rear heights, which is 45 degrees.
Yeah.
So maybe you could come up with a scenario where you have a long enough room, enough space behind your seats that your surround back speakers are, well behind you and not terribly elevated. Then if you went with a 45-degree elevation angle, rear heights could actually be fairly well separated from surround backs. But that's the scenario. You've got a fairly long room, quite a bit of space behind your seats. The reason they came to this conclusion of front heights and rear heights had nothing to do with performance. It's the only setup that functions for all three of those immersive audio formats.
That's right.
That's not because someone sat down and studied it and said, here's what works best. It's like, no, it happens to be the only one that just purely functions as a setup. Now, Denon, Marantz, Yamaha, any of the other companies at some point in the future, maybe they will decide to allow more options for what works. Maybe Oro 3D will agree to more options. But for right now, they've said front heights and rear heights comes closest to being something that is close to what Oro 3D wants you to have, which is front heights and surround heights at 30-degree elevation angles. That's what they want you to have. As well as being compatible with Atmos and DTS:X. Now, if we just don't worry about Oro 3D, like we probably shouldn't, because there's like no content for it, then this whole worry about a universal format goes away. And we really don't have to worry about it anymore.
No one is worried about Oro 3D. No one.
Somebody is. You know, somebody is.
Those people are not even a minority. They don't even show up as a blip on the voting block. It doesn't exist. So yeah, no one's worried about and that's an unfortunate fact of right now is things that things are not working the way they should. They're still ironing out the bugs. You know, everything comes out in beta these days, including DTS:X. So, you know, we just have to wait for everything to start working. Give it another couple of firmware updates, and we'll be.
But I will continue to say, and this is what THX said as well, that having a pair of speakers directly overhead is the most noticeable.
That is by far. That is your. So and, you know, I could get a pair of speakers directly overhead. I could theoretically do it. I could definitely do it if they were those SVS elevation speakers.
I'll say one more thing. Like if you went for a 5-speaker system, so you didn't have surround backs, and then you had rear heights and top middles, or even rear heights and top fronts or something, I'd be fine with that. Yeah. Like I would sacrifice surround backs to have rear heights if you really want to do that, because again, surround backs and rear heights sound so redundant anyway. And if you're going to be using an up mixer at all times, you're never going to notice that you don't have, you know, technical surround backs anymore, because the rear heights are going to be replicating what they would have done anyway. Yeah. So, you know, you could do a setup that was like, because Oro only does 5 speakers anyway. Oro doesn't use surround backs. So you could do a setup that had 5 and then had rear heights, which would be compatible with all 3 formats, and then still have top middles or top fronts that are more or less directly overhead. And that would work with everything as well.
Right. Tyler, really appreciate the in-ceiling subwoofer suggestion from Cliff. Was able to convince his wife that an SVS PC 2000 will look great in the room, especially if he wraps it in fabric and puts it in the corner, which is the pre-wired location anyways. You know, it's amazing how much you can convince your wife of when you start suggesting putting subwoofers in the ceiling. Just saying.
I mean, they clearly, you know, all his speakers are installed in the ceiling, so they went for an installation. I don't know if he did it himself or had someone do it, but
all I gotta say is if I had tried to suggest putting subwoofers in my ceiling, my wife would have given me a look that would be physically painful for me to experience. All right. Lastly, he also wanted to let us know that there's carpet in the room. It just wasn't visible in the pictures, and he's working on something for the first reflection points. So that's just a comment. Okay, Tyler, let us know how it turns out. We're very interested to see your covers for your SVS subs.
Yeah. We were strongly suggesting that if he can get printed panels to have them behind his seat, because that, you know, where his pictures are hanging anyway. So replicate those with panels. And yeah, if you're looking for other ways to add more absorption into your room, they do have ones that are on stands, which means they don't have to be permanently placed or permanently affixed. You can move them around on stands if you want to.
Happening.
Yeah. You know, but it's just a consideration that, you know, you don't have to always have things permanently mounted. It is possible to do things on non-permanent stands.
All right, Tim is in the early stages of formulating a plan for a new home theater setup in his basement and wants to get our thoughts on opinions before he gets too far along. The room is 44 feet long from the back wall, with the kitchen counter half wall about 33 feet away from, so 11 feet in from the back wall.
Yeah. So basically the kitchen is 11 feet deep, I guess.
That's what
that means.
Yeah, that's kitchen back there. The width varies from 13.5 to 15.5 feet due to stairs, doorways, and bathrooms, and the ceiling is 8 feet high. Okay. Before he even starts, do we think a room of this size shape is going to be too large of a challenge? No. What's your budget? If it's $1 billion, then no. If it's $100, yes. What's your budget?
Well, yes, $100. Yeah, that's a challenge, no matter what the room size. If that's all you got to work with. No, but this is under 6,000 cubic feet.
Yeah,
you know,
so if you're under 6,000 cubic feet, we can do some. Well, even if we're over budget,
yeah, it's somewhere between 5,000 and 5,500 cubic feet. Yeah. So this is manageable. You can totally do something here.
All right, he has big plans for what he'd like to do, including getting a very large LG OLED TV, 77 inches or larger if such a thing exists. What?
Well, they're going to have a 77-inch. Be prepared for it to cost $20,000 to $25,000.
It's a car, dude. It's a ar. Are you serious? Apparently,
that's what their last one cost, was $25,000 for their previous 77-inch OLED. So it could be pricey.
Anyways, he's also going to order a pair each. I don't know why he's just not going with the projector. 77 inches. Why aren't you going with the projector? I don't know. Anyways, he wants that really super bright, super whatever. That's fine too. If he's got 20 grand to blow in the thing, I don't care. If he's going to order a pair each of the Synacoustic Sierra Towers, Purion Veris Grand Towers, and the SVS Ultra Towers, keeping the ones he likes the most after listening, and filling out a 7.2 system with matching series bookshelves and a pair of whichever SVS subwoofers we recommend for the room. Thoughts?
I would recommend. Yeah, I would recommend at least the Plus series models.
Yeah, for this size room, you're gonna need at least the Plus, and you might want to kind of look at those Ultras, but those Ultras are pretty pricey. And every time I start thinking of Ultras, I start thinking you should buy from somebody else.
You know, the cylinders are the more approachable option as far as price goes, but it's still expensive.
It's still expensive. So those are all decent, very nice speakers.
Oh yes.
I think that you should, if you're thinking of buying a $25,000 TV, then you should go listen to a whole bunch of speakers before you order these things.
All of these are returnable though, so.
Yeah, that's true, but not all of them.
Two of them pay shipping both ways.
Yeah,
Hyperion and SVS both pay shipping both ways.
Right.
So
these are all good speakers. I mean, you're gonna be happy with any of them. I think would be happy with any of them. So
yeah, I mean, in this room says I don't know his seating distance, right?
We don't know anything.
Obviously,
he told us that's literally it. After this,
with 33 feet to work with, you could have a wide range of seating distances from your screen. There's all sorts of things or possibilities in here. So
I would think, first of all, you need to think about a false wall and a nice big acoustically transparent screen and putting everything behind that screen.
I bet he has a window, though. I mean, this sounds like it's a living room, dining room, kitchen.
I thought this was a basement. Right? This isn't a basement?
There's a kitchen.
His basement. In his basement. Home theater set up in his basement. There's a kitchen.
But there is a kitchen.
So what?
But it's still a great room idea. It's still a kitchen, dining room, living room idea, right?
A little false wall up front. Shut up.
He's
got 20 grand to spend on TV. He could do a false wall. False wall. Anyways, I would be thinking about that and getting matched speakers up front and all that.
Yeah, I would say that any of these speakers that you're considering, all of them are perfectly fine if you are about 15 feet away from them or closer. They all have output loud enough that you could go full reference volume if you're sitting 15 feet away or closer to any of these speakers. But there's the possibility with 33 feet to work with that you're sitting farther away, in which case you might start looking to more higher output, higher efficiency speakers, because that becomes a consideration too, is the efficiency. So I don't know. I mean, you're asking for our thoughts on it. Those are thoughts. But I'm guessing that some of that 33 feet is dining area, not all living room.
Yeah. So.
Right.
Yeah, you might be within that 15 feet wall, window.
Probably are.
Yeah. Anyways, all the hype surrounding the Andrew Jones ELAC bookshelves has some interested in them for use in another room. Have either of us had a chance to hear them? Any thoughts on how they might compare against his previous Pioneer models?
I still haven't heard them yet.
I haven't heard them. What's his name? Jonathan loves them.
Yes. And Ray loves them.
Ray loves them.
And everyone who's reviewed them has loved them. And there does seem to be a commonality in all of the reviews that have done measurements, which is that they do have a bit of a high frequency roll off.
Which is just fine. It's a design choice. Yeah. It says my tweeter is going to break up if I don't roll this thing off. And they roll it off.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
They do have a little bit, if that's something. Everyone praises them for their bass output, for the size and price that they are.
Right. Because bass is what you're looking for in the bookshelf speaker.
Not what I'm looking for, but who knows? I mean, he's saying this is for another room.
Cop out in reviews. It's such a cop out.
I know.
I hate that. I used to do it too because I'd be like, I've got to say something good about these speakers, and not that even when I'd already said a bunch of good things, I'm like, oh, and they have a ton of bass. It really doesn't matter. Who cares if it has a ton of bass? I don't need a ton of bass. I need 80 hertz. Can you get me there? Can you get me there nice and cleanly? Can you get me to like 60, 65, 70? I'll take 70. Just get me close so that I can cross you over into a subwoofer. I don't care if you go down to 40. Who gives a crap? I'm not going to ever use a bookshelf speaker down to 40. And, sometimes people do because they don't have subwoofers yet. That's fine. But guess what they're doing their entire time? They're not using a subwoofer. They're trying to get a subwoofer. That's what they want. They want a subwoofer so they can get those lower frequencies. And then across it over the 80. And then once again, all those things are not used. It's just a cop-out. It's a cop-out. But it's, information people want. And everybody likes to read, oh, they've got such good bass for a bookshelf speaker.
Well, Andrew Jones himself said that with the slightly larger working budget that he had for the debut series versus his old Pioneer speakers, that he got a little bit of extension on both ends. So it plays a little bit higher, it plays a little bit lower, and with a little bit better distortion figures, meaning slightly less distortion in these ELACs. I have no reason to doubt those claims because the measurements bear that out. And Andrew doesn't really exaggerate his claims on the speakers that he's done. So far in the videos I've seen, he hasn't been like one of these overhyped marketing guys about his own stuff. So I more or less believe that. It bears out with what all the reviews and the people that we know who've heard them are saying about them as well. So that's basically what you're getting over the Pioneers for the extra $100. A little bit extension on both ends, a tiny little bit less distortion, but that's about it. But overall, those Pioneers, they had a little high frequency roll off too. So it seems like that's kind of a design choice that Andrew Jones makes with the components that he's using. So I bet they sound more similar than different, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't live in the McMansion. Chris, who actually does live in the McMansion, has a follow-up projector question. At the $2,000 price point, would we recommend buying a projector now or this year at all? Would it be better to wait for 4K models that can match the quality of the current Epsons and Sonys, lumens, black levels, quiet fan, zoom, and shift features and all that? That also have the new features, HDR, all the other stuff, to make the purchase really worth it. What's our guess on how long until such projectors are even available at $2,000?
Ooh.
I am guessing. What are they at right now? They're at like 5.
Yeah, I think like $4,500 is about the least expensive for ones that have like HDR, Rec 2020.
I'm thinking like at minimum 2 years. That's kind of my guess. I don't think we're going to see them next year.
Yeah, I doubt it. I mean, the reason we have models like the 5030 UB at $2,000 right now is because Epson hasn't released an update for that in 2 years.
Yeah.
They've kept that model around for 2 years now, and the price has come down a bit over time. Yeah, I mean, if you got $2,000 to spend, you can get a 5030 UB right now. It is a heck of a nice 1080p projector. No, it doesn't do HDR. No, it doesn't do 4K, but it is a very nice looking projector at a very nice price. I agree with Tom. I don't think we're seeing HDR performance at $2,000 next year.
No, I don't think so.
Genuine 4K still doesn't even really exist outside of Sony. Sony's the only one with actual 4K panels. JVCs are wobbling their panels. Epson is wobbling their panel.
Yeah, projectors are going to be a little bit on the slow in the update. And it's unfortunate because that's really where, if you need 4K, that's where you need it, is in the projector.
And to really get DCI color, you gotta do something different than the traditional lamps that are being used, because they don't have that color spectrum. The Epson LS10000 with its laser light engine, it can reach full DCI color. It won't take them much to add HDR to that model, but it's also $8,000. And it's not even a genuine 4K panel. It's a 1080p panel that's being wobbled back and forth to fake 4K. So getting from there down to 2000, that's going to be a number of years away yet. I don't know if JVC or Sony will ever really do it. I think they eventually they will.
Oh, everybody will eventually.
Eventually, but I think it's a bit. So honestly, if you're thinking to yourself, hey, I could get the 5030 right now for $2,000, I can enjoy it for 2 to 3 years easily, and then afford a 4K HDR projector at something closer to $2,000-$2,500 by then. That's a lot of value. That's a lot of value.
I would, if I had $2,000 and that, I would not be waiting to see if a 4K projector comes out. Next year.
I wouldn't be living with a 40-inch LCD when I could have a 120-inch 5030 thrown image for $2,000 right now. Just because I'm worried about 4K. So
Toby shared a short video by Brian Dunning about why people prefer vinyl or digital audio. It's a YouTube link, so we will share that on the podcast. I watched the whole thing. Thank you for sending a short one. Everybody sends us these videos that are like hours long. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't got time to watch this.
Yes, who are we to talk with our 2 hours a week videos?
All over my house as we speak are out there right now destroying things. That's what they do. They're terrible. And if anybody wants one, I'll give you one. Anywho, yeah, I agreed with everything in this video. Everything.
Yeah.
I agreed with every single word of this. The first thing you said was, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's a stupid
speakers
argument.
Matter a lot more.
Everything else in your signal chain matters more than this, except for cables, obviously. But you know, everything else matters more than this. Plus, you can't even really test them A/B because the mixing is totally different. So he cited one. He's like, but people still want to know which one's better, vinyl or digital. He goes, there's one test where they tried really hard to do it as as rigorously as possible. They had a single mix, which they put on vinyl, and it's the same exact mix, and they put that on digital, and they played it for people blind, and people significantly, the results were statistically significant that they preferred the digital.
Yes.
That's because there wasn't that. I don't even know if there was a or not, but
of course honestly, there is. It's like unavoidable with vinyl.
So it's just
vinyl has a noise
floor. Comment on there is just this guy just cursing this dude out for all this other stuff, and then calling everybody else gay. So real mature discussion on that one. But everything this guy says is, as far as I'm concerned, dead on.
Yeah, and he was like, there are ancillary reasons for why people prefer vinyl, not to do with the sound strictly,
absolutely,
but
no problems with that.
They like the liner notes, they like the larger cover, they like the experience of placing the tone arm on there and the whole ritual that some people go through when they're listening to what, if that floats your boat, we are fine with that. We are also fine with you having a copy of an album on vinyl that you think sounds better than the copy on CD. That is totally. I have cases like that. I don't own a turntable, so I'm not spinning that vinyl, but I have heard albums on vinyl that I thought, I do prefer this version to the CD version, and just in terms of
all because of the mixing. But yes,
because of but that's the reason, right? Yeah. Like, I prefer the mastering that was done on the vinyl version. Okay, that's completely legitimate. So yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
But Brian says all that stuff too. So
agree with all that. So. That's what it comes down to. For us in vinyl, it isn't about the medium. We don't hate vinyl. We hate people who say vinyl is better
inherently
because it is vinyl.
Yes, or that CDs are inherently flawed, that they cannot sound good because they're digital, or any other number of reasons that they're not capable of sounding good. That's what I am
agnostic to the form in which my stuff, the content comes to me. I don't care if it's streamed. I don't care if it's on a CD. I don't care if it's small gnomes playing it on harpsichords. I don't care. All I care is the fidelity and how it sounds. That's what I care about. I don't care that it came on a CD. I don't care that it came on a flash drive. I don't care that it came on reel to reel. I just care what it sounds like. And I have heard atrocious vinyl. Atrocious. And I've heard really good vinyl. Doesn't,
and same on CD.
Exactly. Heck, the Rock Band mix of Metallica's most recent album had more dynamic range than the actual CD that they put out. That should tell you something right there. All right, it's all about the mastering and the mixing. So. All right, Dev has got a question here. It's his understanding that if a subwoofer crossover is set to 80 hertz and the mains are set to large, the mains get everything 81 hertzes up. Is this correct? No, it's not. Let's keep going, but we'll do the whole thing. So the second part is, what about when they're set to small? Do they still get everything 81 hertz and up?
Yes, and then some.
Yeah, it actually the answer is still actually no, because they don't just get 81 hertz; they get 80 and 79 and 78 and lower, because it's crossing over. Okay?
It's a slope. It's a filter.
It's a slope. So first of all, when you set your mains to large, they're getting a full range.
They're getting full range. They're getting all the way from below 20 hertz to above 20 kilohertz.
That's right. They're getting every bit. Whatever's on there, they're getting it.
That's right.
Okay. Now, that's when you set it to large. when you set your crossover, because first of all, when you set it to large, you can't have a crossover. Clearly, you have
Well,
to try this.
some allow it when you have set your front speakers to large. They still allow you to set a crossover if you set the subwoofer output to LFE plus mains.
That's
Some
true, yeah.
AV receivers do allow that. And now what that is doing is taking the signal that is in your front left and right speakers, applying a low pass filter to it. So it's gradually making the sounds above 80 hertz quieter and quieter, and then sending that to your subwoofer output. Your front left and right speakers in this scenario are still getting the entire range of frequencies, the entire range from below 20 hertz to above 20 kilohertz. But the subwoofer is getting it's duplicating the bass that is in the front left and right speakers with a filter.
So there's 3 sources of bass, or
yes.
in this case, one sub
in that scenario.
In both your 2 large speakers.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is, don't do that, by the way. Don't ever do that. That's a terrible thing to do. Anyway, so when you set it to small, then your speakers it sets a crossover, a slope. So at 80 hertz, if you think about like if your frequency was absolutely flat, at 80 hertz, it starts to gradually taper off. And that means that those sounds are getting whatever volume it was supposed to be. It's actually that your speaker is playing it quieter than it normally would if you had set it to large. That is being crossed over and given to the subwoofer. At the same time, the subwoofer is playing everything as low as below 20 hertz all the way up to 80 hertz, and then it's crossing over into above that as well. So it is going to be playing 81 and 82 and 83 and 84 and even more, but at lower volumes than what you would that actual maximum volume it's supposed to be at. That's because they're at this point these things are crossing over, so it's a little bit of both in that case.
Yep. But yeah, they are filters being applied. So you can think of the signal was there and then it is being attenuated. So the speakers below 80 hertz, it's being attenuated gradually. They're getting quieter and quieter. The subwoofer plays up to 80 hertz and then it gets quieter and quieter above that. But the speakers,
and that's why earlier I said I don't care how much bass there is in a bookshelf speaker. I just wanted to get to 60 or 65 or 70. Sure. Because I know that there's that crossover. It is going to be playing those frequencies, and I don't want it to be playing instead of the actual sound it's supposed to be playing. Yeah. So his second question is, what is the best way to connect multiple subs to a receiver? Is a Y splitter okay? Or does each sub need its own output? Well, a Y splitter is just fine. And if you have a receiver that gives you multiple outputs, you don't want stereo subs. You want your subs to be set in mono, which essentially means you have an internal Y splitter, which is what you're using. The nice thing about using that is your speaker or your receiver can usually level match those 2 subs individually for you, rather than you having to do it by unplugging one and then setting the level and then unplugging the other one, setting the level to make sure that it's
but not always. Lots of receivers have 2 physical subwoofer plugs, but they play in mono all the time. There's no option to set any difference between the 2 of them. There's quite a few receivers that are like that, which, like Tom said, in that case, is just an internal Y splitter. Yeah. But if you only have one physical subwoofer output plug on your AV receiver, absolutely use a Y splitter and send the 2 ends of the Y splitter to your 2 subs. That is totally fine. That's what we'd recommend, in fact. Yeah.
Brad has finally convinced his wife that they need a projector. However, a support beam running perpendicular to where the screen will go limits the maximum throw to 5.5 feet, and is forcing him to consider only short throw models. I'm confused as to why this perpendicular thing is making this difference here. Why?
I think it must actually be like parallel to the screen plane.
So he has to put it in front of?
Like if you're sitting, there is a beam overhead going from left to right. I believe that to be the case. So there's this beam, so the projector would have to be either in front of or behind the beam, right?
I guess. I'm a little confused.
I believe that's the case.
Anyways, whatever it is, he's got a 5.5 foot throw distance. Yes. So he's only looking at these short throw models. He found a refurbished BenQ 1085 ST, sold directly by BenQ. Comes with a warranty, but he wants our thoughts on buying refurbished products. Are there any questions he should ask BenQ before buying? The only question, well, there's 2 questions I want to have answered when I'm buying a used or refurbished projector. 1, does it work?
Pretty darn sure it does if it's refurbished by BenQ.
One would think that BenQ would know whether or not the thing turned on or not. Number 2, and most importantly, how many hours is on that lamp.
Yes.
Because I want a brand new lamp in there.
Yes.
That's about all I care about.
Or just be prepared to buy a new lamp.
If I'm buying something directly from BenQ, I would ask them straight up, is that a brand new lamp? Because if it's not a brand new lamp, will you provide a brand new lamp or give me one? Because a lot of times they will. It used to be that projector sensor. Oh man, what was the name of that company? They're not around anymore anyway, so it doesn't matter. But they used to always ship an extra lamp with every projector. And I love that company. They're not probably because they gave away too many lamps. If we don't like this idea, what else would we recommend?
Honestly, I mean, I emailed back and forth with Brad a little bit, and I can't think of a better solution. I mean, he wants to keep this to under $1,000 for the price of the projector. It does legitimately need to be this 5.5-foot throw distance. There isn't really any other option. Certainly not one that's better for the price. So the 1085 was a darn nice projector, and it was kind of nice that they had this option for an extremely short throw. So.
I'm fine with it. Anyways, figuring out exactly where the image is going to line up is rather confusing. The BenQ projectors have lens offset and a small amount of vertical lens shift. What is the best way to figure out exactly where the top edge of the image will end up based on how high the projector is mounted? This is really a Rob question. While you answer this, I'm going to go get a drink of water because my voice is going.
All right. So, yeah, you have to be very careful when a projector has lens offset because they almost always list it as a percentage, which is going to be confusing. And then you have to be concerned with when it has vertical lens shift on top of that, what direction does that lens shift go? And it's not like there's some universal generalized rule across all projectors. This is going to be a brand by brand, model by model, in fact. So really you kind of have to look at the manual for the projector to try and figure this out. So looking through the BenQ manuals, because we're also possibly considering the HT2050 that we mentioned earlier. However, each throw cannot be short enough to work in this particular case. But either way, these are the types of figures that you're going to be looking at. So when it says that it has a 110% lens offset or a range of 105 to 115% lens offset, that percentage is referring to the image's height. So whatever the image's height might be, let's say the height of the image is 45 inches, or let's make it an easier number, 50 inches is the height of the image, then it means that the center line of the projector, so if you drew a dot right in the middle of the lens of the projector, that middle of the projector's lens would have to be, take the height of the image plus 10% if it's 110% offset, and that's the amount. So we're talking adding 5 inches in this case. That's where it would be if it's 110% of a 50-inch tall image. When it has a range from 105 to 115% like the 2050 does, then it's the same idea, but it means that there is no time with that lens offset and that vertical lens shift where the center line of the lens is equal with the top edge of the screen when the projector is ceiling mounted or below the top edge of the screen. If the range is 105% to 115% of the image's height, then the lens of the projector is always above the top edge of the screen. Always, always, always. So that's how you sort of look at those figures. It is confusing because they're talking about percentages. And like at first, Brad was like, are they talking about like percentage of the diagonal? It's like, nope, it's percentage of the height of the image that you're throwing. So BenQ in their manuals actually provides a chart, which is kind of nice, although it's in millimeters. So good luck. So it's a little, use your conversion calculator to go from millimeters to inches. But yeah, that's what those percentages are talking about.
Yeah. All right. Justin started listening to AV Rant back in the day when he was young and easily impressed by audiophile pseudoscience, and the show helped nudge him back to sanity. So that's good.
Yay.
He's moving into a fixer-upper house and really wants to buy and install in-wall speakers for his surround and surround backs of a 7.1 setup. He already has 3 Sierra 2s for the mains and center. Would like something at least decently matching. So far, he's considering some monoprice 8-inch 3-way in-wall 100-watt. I don't know what the 100-watt has to do with the price of cheese China. Anyways, they're $90 a pair, which is kind of crazy low. He's also thinking about the Imperial Audio Atmos L6 in-walls, RBH MC6s, the HTD, what's it? Home Theater Direct is what HTD stands for America. HDW65 in-walls, which are Let me see. Those are 130. The RBHs are 750. The Imperial Audio is at 300. And the mono prices are $90. Those are all per pair.
Right. Now, keep in mind the Sierra 2s are $1,500 a pair.
Right.
For those speakers, they come with ribbon tweeters, actual genuine ribbon tweeters, not folded ribbon.
What's his face thinking about doing an in-wall speaker? Didn't you say something about that? No, that was an on-wall surround speaker.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. So I wanted to mention that. So David Fabricant, who is the owner and founder of Ascend Acoustics and the lead designer over there, it's his company and his speakers. He is presently designing something he's going to call the Sierra Sat, the Sierra Satellite, which is a miniature version. It will be able to use the same tweeters as are offered in any of the Sierra bookshelf speakers. So the standard Sierra 1 tweeter, the NRT tweeter, or the RAL ribbon tweeter that is used in the Sierra 2. Same tweeters. It's going to be this miniature thing, 6 inches deep, wall mountable. However, they're not going to be cheap. They're absolutely not going to be cheap. In fact, Dave said he's a little worried they might end up being more expensive than the Sierra 2s. Nice. Because it's a very complex cabinet he's had to design because it needs to be a ported design so it can play like Tom wants it to, down to about 65 hertz, even though it's kind of tiny. So they're using a very powerful 4-inch driver in there, then this expensive ribbon tweeter, and then a complex cabinet. It's not going to be a cheap option.
The complex cabinet basically means a folded horn. They have a folded horn.
Yes, and it's made out of bamboo as well. So it's...
Oh, great. That makes it cheaper.
It is not a cheap option. However, if you want something that will as closely timbre match while being small and wall mountable, that would be the solution, but I don't think it's quite what you're looking for, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I think so too. Out of the ones you said here, obviously for me, if you want to make sure you're going to get something that's going to sound clean and neutral, I would go with the RBHs. RBHs just in general have a very clean, flat sound. Now, I don't know how well they're going to pair with the Sierra 2s, and they might not pair that well at all. But frankly, for surrounds and surround backs, maybe you don't have to worry about this timbre match as much as Rob does.
No, I agree. Yeah, if you
I would think that you could get away with something quite a bit. Now, I too would be a little skeptical of the mono prices, though. I didn't click on the link to see what they look like. A lot of times when I click on the mono price link, what I see is a speaker that I recognize from some other manufacturer. So
right. Yeah. I mean, the Sierra 2s measure very, very flat. In fact, on axis, they have a tiny little bit of a treble lift when you're dead on axis. But once you get into the listening window, which is quite wide on there, but if you went 15 plus or minus degrees to the left and right of dead on center, and you included that as your listening window measurement, then the Sierra 2s measure very, very, very flat. So in terms of a timbre match with something, you are looking for a neutral, flat speaker, not something that's going to have a high-frequency roll-off, not something that's going to have a mid-bass bump, which is very common in a ton of speakers, because people tend to find those things pleasing. But if you want something that's kind of close to a timbre match to Sierra 2s, I mean, it's difficult. Keep in mind that, you are talking about considerably more expensive and legitimately more expensive. The components actually do cost more in the Sierra 2s. It's not pure markup going in there. I will say that in my experience, focals in walls match pretty darn nicely to Ascend's speakers. However, not cheap. You're still looking, even for their like Chorus 700 series, their in-wall 706s, they're like $500 each.
Wow. Rob's really bumping the price up here.
So, I mean, I can say that they sound very nice, but also they bloody well better because they're expensive speakers. Yeah. Revel has some very nice, very neutral in-wall speakers, not always cheap though. They tend to be looking at about $350 each and up. So right in that same ballpark range as the RBHs you're already looking at. The only other in-walls that I've liked myself are Kefs. I do tend to like their sound overall. However, I'm not sure I'd say they sound really, really close to those Sierra 2s. I think they're good sounding in-wall speakers. If I were building an in-wall system, I would definitely be looking at Kef, like their Q series. But they're not like super cheap either, to be honest. I have expensive taste, apparently.
I don't like the way that these mono price speakers look. They're weird. They have like a woofer and then a tweeter off to the side and the mid. It just looks like they ran out of the room. They're like, oh, we got to put a tweeter in here. It's a little weird.
Yeah, I mean, the Kefs you're looking at about $650 for a pair, so they're a little bit cheaper than the RBHs. But honestly, Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I would probably opt for the RBHs over the Kefs. I would
Yeah,
probably opt for a Revel or Focal right alongside those RBHs, but none of them are the inexpensive choice. Not a
yeah.
single one of those.
That being said, you could probably go with those Aperion audios and be all right.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you're really worried about it and you want to make sure, if you get those RBHs, I
Uh
can
huh.
pretty much guarantee you they're going to sound very close.
Yeah.
Uh, close
Ugh.
enough, I would say.
I mean,
Uh,
it's hard to match $1,500 a pair speakers with $300 $200 a pair in walls.
it's
Like,
just yeah. But these are surrounds. They're not. You're not
but they
going.
are
It's not.
surrounds. Exactly.
It's not
Yeah.
like it's a center channel.
Not at all. So it is a matter of degrees, and we're talking big time diminishing returns here. So if someone said, "Hey, I paired up some $200 a pair in-wall speakers, and I thought it sounded fine. Did I think they sound identical? No, but I thought they sounded totally fine and satisfying." I'd be like, "Absolutely, I believe you, 100%." Because surrounds and surround backs, definitely you can skimp there if you're going to skimp anywhere in your system. But if you are the person who's like, I really want to get as close as I can, I have the budget, will I hear an improvement? I would say yes. You can do a little better than those $200, $300 pair in walls, but it's diminishing returns for sure.
Yeah,
I hope that's a reasonable answer.
I think it's a reasonable answer.
Yeah.
James shared the page detailing the Spherovox. Is that what we're calling this?
Spherovox. That's what it looks like.
Spherovox.
Spherovox, yeah.
Low frequency folded corner horn. That's a stupid name. You didn't fold. It's a folded horn corner design. It's not a
Yes.
folded corner horn design.
I think it's they say corner folded horn. That's the order they have it in.
Okay. Anyways,
Corner folded horn.
this thing is super duper dumb, but it's basically like is there two drivers in
There
there?
are two drivers that are facing each other, and
And
they are firing in phase.
yes, so they are firing at each other. Whatever. It doesn't
And
matter.
the throat of the horn is smaller than the diameter of the driver, so this is a compression driver
Compression
setup.
driver set, and they have like three. It's like you can actually shove this into your corner, and
Yes.
it looks like a like if you let it sit there long enough, a little pod version of you would erupt from it and kill you.
Yeah, it looks
and
like an
then-
escape pod from a spaceship or something.
It does, and then they show how you can take multiple of these and build them, add them
Right.
together into a
Sphere.
dodecahedron of some sort, which is both awesome and awful. Now, I actually looked at this and went, I kind of like this because you can stick it in the corner, and
Yeah.
while it is a stupid design, it is a stupid design that is really kind of cool. And you'd be like, what the hell is that thing? It's a subwoofer. What? And you go there, and it would be kind of cool. That being said, it rolls off at 25, so throw that thing
Well,
away.
I mean, this is for huge venues. That's
Is that what
this
it's
is
for?
Well, of course. I mean, well, it has to be. Why would you need a compression driver folded horn dual 18 or 15-inch driver?
Is that what's in there? I thought there was like
Yes.
10-inch drivers in that thing. I was paying
No,
attention.
it is. I mean, this is for insane SPL, and you're going to have one in each corner. I mean, they're saying put one in all eight. 8 of them. So the bottom corners and the top corners, right? This is for I don't know
think
what
it's
this is a
fantastic.
stadium.
I want that. I want that in my home theater right now. I want 8 in here. I will do a review. You come install them, and I'll do a review. A
These things
review
are
will be what? I can't hear you.
Yeah,
What?
no kidding.
I just threw up. I don't know why.
I put
feel like queasy.
0.03. I put 0.03 of a watt into each of them, and I went deaf. And that's not even an exaggeration. No, I mean, there is a place for something like this, which is we require insane SPL, and yet we still want to keep maximum floor space available in this venue. How can we do that? Something like this.
Yeah.
There's a time and place for
I
this.
do
So please
want to
don't
see
put
them
it in
build
your
the
theater.
dodecahedron. I want that thing to just roll around. I want them to stick them all together until it's like a 20-sided die, and then that's how you roll to see whether or not you hit the dragon. You just you play like a 20 hertz tone. The thing bounces across the room, and then somebody's got to go on top and go, "Oh, it's an 18."
Yep.
Did I hit? Did I hit? Check the chart. Did I hit? I think I hit. I must have hit. It's an 18. I must. What do you mean I didn't hit? You're cheating. I hate you.
Wild stuff.
Come on. D&D days. I'm bringing it old school in here. All right, Justin on Facebook wants to know if we have any indication of when Emotiva's new passive air motive speakers will be shipping.
According to the people on their forum, they are expecting to announce the specifications, which they have not even finalized yet, sometime in April. You cannot get much more vague than that.
No, we have no clue. No. And not only do we have no clue, but even if they announced it, I would say I still have no clue because that's how
Emotiva.
That's how they work. Anyways, he previously mentioned one of the new speakers was super good imaging, but he also just wants to experiment and hear speakers that are clearly different and exciting. So, if he gets the Air Motive T1 towers, which use folded ribbon tweeters, should he also replace his Axiom M3 surround speakers with something that uses a folded ribbon tweeter? Well, it would depend. I did not do the search on this. First of all, you want to look at how the sensitivities of these things and how that works out. And second, I don't know, man. Axiom M3 speakers, I mean, they're all right, but I don't know that. I don't know. If you've already got them, I wouldn't replace anything until I got the new ones and go, should I replace them? Because that's what it will tell you. You don't need us to tell you that. You just wait. And then when you get them, you go, yep, that's not working. And then
the nice thing is the Emotiva, we're talking about the passive air motive speakers, because they're right now, if you go to the website, you'll be like, they already have air motive speakers. Yeah, those are the powered monitors that they've had for a little while. These are the passive, meaning they don't have any amplifiers built in. You connect them to a regular amplifier, regular AV receiver that they announced at CES. So they are coming out supposedly later this year. The nice thing there is they do have bookshelf models that are not crazy expensive at all. So if you bring in the T1 towers, you're listening to it and you go, you know what? I can clearly hear a difference in timbre between my towers and my existing Axiom M3 speakers. I would really like that to match better. At least it isn't going to cost you a crazy arm and a leg to get the matching bookshelf speakers from Emotiva at that point. So yeah, that's how I would come at that.
Yeah. Just wait. So B, if he keeps his current surround speakers, can we talk a bit about how the sound of the new front speakers might differ? No one. How could we possibly know that from a speaker that doesn't even exist yet?
Yeah, you could go by the powered air motives, but even there, that's making a big assumption that they're going to sound the same.
We have no idea how they're going to sound. We have no idea. We can't. I'm going to say it until people start believing me. It doesn't matter what your tweeter or your driver is made out of, what its design is. If you have a really good design, a really powerful tweeter or woofer or subwoofer driver, and you put it in a crappy box with a crappy design, it's going to sound like crap. If you have a mediocre complement of drivers and you put them in a perfectly designed box with a perfectly designed crossover, will it sound like a $10,000 speaker? No, but it's going to sound really, really good. And that's why you look at stuff like these Andrew Jones speakers we were talking about. And you're like,
cheap parts, but well put together.
Exactly. Cheap parts, well put together. He's got a little bit more money to play with the next one, gets a little bit more extension, but they still sound kind of similar, according to just about everybody. And why? Well, because that's how he designed speakers, and those are the parts he's familiar with, and that's the way it goes. So I have no clue how these things might differ.
I mean, I would venture to say I would not expect them to sound the same.
No, I wouldn't
expect these air motive speakers to sound the same as your M3s. I would be surprised if they did. I got to be honest, because the M3s are not perfectly neutral speakers to begin with. The Emotiva speakers, all of them up to this point, have not been perfectly neutral speakers. So it would surprise me if they sounded exactly the same as one another. But how they will differ, I no idea.
I would expect there to be more extension on the top end of with the folded ribbon tweeter, but
as long as you're sitting on axis, I mean,
that said, who knows what you'll actually experience? Okay. So, do we have any recommendations for different sounding speakers? He's always considered Magapan the MMGs, although he's a bit concerned about whether his Denon AVR X4000 can power them all by itself. It can definitely power them. I don't know how loud it's going to get before it starts to smoke, but it will power them. Those are 4-ohm speakers at like 86 dB efficient or something. So
I don't think they're even that.
No, I looked them up. I'm pretty sure it was 86 what it said. But yeah, you could power them. I wouldn't push it. That would be my suggestion. I'd watch the volume and check the heat.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to try to power 7 of them.
No,
if you were doing a 7-point
two.
setup.
You get two.
Two of them. Yeah, it should be able to power the pair, but yeah. So I mean, other speakers that have a clear Klipsch.
Klipsch would be a good one.
They have a distinct sound to them.
Yeah. Kef's got a completely different driver arrangement. He'd probably like to hear that.
Yeah, Golden Ear.
Golden Ear. We've talked about them in the past as having a non-neutral sound. B&W.
Yep.
They have their own sound. Bang & Olufsen, if you want to hear that sound too. They have their own sound that they're clearly going for.
Yeah.
I guess electrostats, some sort of electrostatic speaker would be worth
I mean,
hearing.
Martin Logan is the obvious choice there because widely available.
Widely available, though they're not true electrostats, but yeah. So
yeah, that gives you a pretty good sampling to start with right there.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Oh, you know what? If you can afford them, Polk's LSI series speakers, they definitely have a very characteristic sound to them.
Which one of those?
Those are the top of the line with their ring radiator drivers.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Very beamy.
Yes.
But if you're sitting right in the sweet spot, he keeps talking about imaging. If you're sitting right in the sweet spot, very vivid sounding, those LSIs from Polk.
All right. Infinite Gary shared an article about the $15 million audio test lab built at Virginia Tech called The Cube. It was built in partnership with Harman and an international engineering consulting group called ARUP. They're using space to study several methods of creating extremely immersive audio with pinpoint positioning and like 124 speakers, I think, 128 speakers.
Something like that, yeah. Like that. Well, if you're going to do wave field synthesis, you start needing that many. That's how it goes.
They're doing like basically there are huge walls and there's screens all around you, and there's equidistant speakers placed all around the room so that if a sound is supposed to be coming from 25 feet away, it is projected from all these different speakers in such a way so that it would actually hit you the way it would hit you when it was 25 feet away. So, Gary, that could be your next theater. Get that.
I mean, I'm not surprised that Harman's involved in a project like this. I mean, obviously this isn't about home theater. This is about discovering new things with how sound works, which is cool. It's awesome that somebody's doing research like this. And maybe eventually it will have a practical application in some form, because what they're trying to do is say, they're going to be looking for like, what's the minimum number of speakers you need to be able to create virtual positions, really convincingly be able to make it seem like a sound is coming from a location where no speaker exists. That's one of the big things that they're aiming to try and do.
Right.
So, it's cool to do stuff like that, because we all know that, sure, Dolby Atmos is this thing, but you more or less need a speaker where you want the sound to come from for it to really sound like that's where it's coming from. It's hard to use 4 speakers overhead to like pan sounds around above you, because that's not the way our ears are positioned. So they're looking at what does it actually take to do that kind of stuff, and it's going to be a lot more speakers.
Gary also heard that one issue with soft dome tweeters is that since the material is not extremely stiff, the breakup frequency is often below 20 hertz. Is this true?
Or 20 kilohertz.
20 kilohertz, sorry. It does say 20 hertz on there.
It does, yeah. That's a typo by me.
Yeah. So, Gary, stop talking to the AVS people.
You know what? I think this might have actually been one of those Andrew Jones interviews.
Could very well be. It doesn't matter. What it comes down to, there is an
Andrew
article on Audioholics where Gene and Hugo have a video. You don't have to watch it. I didn't. But it does talk about soft dome versus metallic or metal dome tweeters. And one of the differences there is that the dome tweeters, when they break up, the breakup is much more dramatic and much more audible. So there'll be a huge dip or a huge spike in the frequency response. Whereas a soft dome, when it breaks up, it's much more forgiving to the breakup and tends not to be as noticeable, not to be as dramatic.
And we should talk about what breakup is when we're talking about a driver.
Well, okay. So when we think of a driver is that this cone that's going in and out. Either it's a concave or convex cone, usually. Convex when it's in a tweeter design usually, and it's going back and forth in and out, right? Well, as it's going in and out, if it's going in and out too hard or trying to do something it's not physically capable of doing, it'll deform.
Right.
And when it deforms, that's what we call breakup. Therefore, the waveform that is putting out is not a perfect sphere or inverted sphere or whatever it is. It's not that perfect wave. It's now got some weirdness to it.
Yeah,
When that metal dome breaks up, it might ring, it might make a sound, it might do all sorts of weirdness. Whereas the soft dome, it breaks up in a specific spot, but the rest of it deforms and kind of basically buffers it.
right. Because it is not super stiff, it kind of has self-damping.
Exactly.
You know,
so what ends up happening here is you can say to that same person or persons or whoever, whatever, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it's made out of. You can make it out of animal hide. You can make it out of bones of blind Tibetan monks. You can make that out of anything. It will at some point break up. All of these things, no matter what it is, it has some sort of ringing mode or breakup mode or this or that. They all have some problem with them. And every single driver, every single drive material, all of them have the unique issues that have to be dealt with. And you deal with them through design, and you deal with them through crossover. And if you don't, then you have a speaker that sounds bad. You can look at that same article I was talking about on Audioholics, and they show two RBH speakers. One uses a soft dome tweeter, one uses a metal dome tweeter, and both of them have a nice flat frequency response all the way up through the range. Mm-hmm. And they do that because they use quality drivers, number one, and number two, they're well designed. Yep. So Gary, no absolutes. There are no absolutes.
I mean, what I would say is that when you look at inexpensive soft dome tweeters,
sure,
right, that in general they do tend to start to have technical breakup below 20 kilohertz,
which is why Byron rolls them off.
Yeah, exactly, because they are not extremely stiff. That is along the lines of truth. It resembles the truth. That very inexpensive soft dome tweeters, that it is a challenge to get them to play truly linearly all the way up to 20 kilohertz because they are a soft material, a silk, a cloth, a paper, something like that, treated with a coating to stiffen them up a little bit. So there is that little bit of generalization, which is what Andrew was mentioning. He was like, the cheaper I have to go in the soft dome tweeter, the lower I have to start rolling it off to avoid it breaking up, which is, that is true.
That is a well-designed speaker. That's what you do. You address these problems. You cross over into your tweeter before it starts to break up.
Yes.
From your mid-range. And you cross over your mid-range into your woofer before it starts to break up. That's just the way, that's how you do it. And if you don't, then you end up with issues. And that's what we see with poorly designed speakers. Now, we have a very long question from Richard here that we are going to skip because it's very long and we don't have that much time.
Sorry, Richard. You'll be first up next week.
First up next week. But Leighton wants to know if we have any thoughts on the Sennheiser Urbanite XL headphones. He's considering buying a pair. I had to read all of 5-6 words before I went, nope. On these headphones. Things I read that made me say nope. Like Beats, but sound a little better.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good. Prodigious bass.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. These are all warning signs.
Slightly harsh highs. Smiley face curve.
Yeah. So basically what these are Sennheiser's answer, if you will, to Beats.
Yes.
So they have a Beats-like sound.
Yes.
For less than Beats, because I think they're supposed to be $200, but you can get them easily at Amazon for like $175 or something like that. Yep. So they're cheaper than Beats, but they have that Beats sound that people who have had Beats and want to have something else.
And they are passive. They don't have the battery and the active noise canceling.
Yeah, they don't have all that stuff. I'm not. I would not recommend these.
Yeah.
I mean,
I always.
I'm sorry. Let me say one more thing. Club. I think even Sennheiser calls them a club sound.
Yes. Yeah.
And when I said club sound, I was like, "Whoa, no, sir. That's like, no. It's like some girl on the first date telling you she has a history in porn. You're like, whoa, hold on a second. We're gonna start off right there with the club sound. I think not. So yeah, that's why.
So yeah, I mean, I'm always in favor of getting a more neutral headphone that has good extension, that is capable of producing loud, prodigious bass, so that if you want that, you use an equalizer in your player to give you whatever you want.
which
Because I'm,
are readily available all over the
oh
place
yeah,
these days.
because it's like, hey, if you love, over accentuated bass, that's fine. But if you have headphones that always give you over accentuated bass, you can never get away from it. That's the problem. So I'm more in favor of getting something that it begins neutral, has the capability of playing the loud bass if you want to, and then using an equalizer to do it. I really like the PSB M4U headphones in this. I mean, they're more expensive, than $250. So they are a more expensive headphone, but I really like them in this, a little bit more stylish. Like they're not just your traditional cans, a little bit more stylish. They do have very good deep bass extension, but the PSBs are a much more neutral headphone to start with.
The
And then you can
Sennheisers,
equalize
if you
it.
want Sennheisers, get the Momentums.
Yeah, there's
Those
that. Yeah, yeah.
good extension, nice and flat.
They're
Uh,
similar price though too, aren't they?
yeah, they're similar price. Yeah,
Yeah.
but they have the on-ear ones, which if you have small ears like me,
Yeah.
are over-ear as well. And not quite as good, but
Okay, the Momentums you can get for about $200, so they're less expensive than the PSBs.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean that's our take. I mean if you know for a fact that what you want is crazy bass thumping and that's all you want, then okay.
you should go with the V Modus, the
That's
Crossfade
true.
M100s. Those would
true.
probably be better than these
But they're
too.
more expensive.
They are, but they have a bunch of different options out there now too
Yeah.
that are in different price ranges, and I would trust theirs to be. And plus, you're not going to have any friends that have the V Modus, that's for sure.
Hmm.
And they're all metal, which
Yeah,
is
they're
kinda
very
cool.
nicely constructed.
They're
Excellent
very
construction
nicely
on the
constructed,
Vimodas.
yeah,
Yeah.
and fairly
Yeah, those
comfortable.
Sennheisers are very, very plasticky.
They are like I looked at them, I was like, oh, I don't even like the way they look. But if you really want them, then I guess get them and tell us how wrong we are. That's fine.
Oh yeah.
Or go to AVS. I'm sure there's somebody there who'll both agree and tell you you're stupid at the same time. All right. Once again, we thank our listeners of the week: Andrew, Tyler, Mark, Ben, Justin, and Richard. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you so much. It's so nice to see new names and donors. It's so
That's
cool.
right. If you would like to get your question answered on the podcast, you can email us at rob@avrant.com, tom@avrant.com. Come to the website and comment, www.avrant.com. Facebook.com/avrantpodcast. What else did I miss? Twitter at First Reflect for Rob, at avrant_Tom for me, at Austin Pond for our producer, Austin. Did I say question at avrant? Did I say that? Email that too.
It never hurts to mention again. Question at avrant.com. That is the primary one. It'll make sure you get onto the topic list if you email. Question
Right.
at avrant.com.
Austin, our producer, Dell, has his own podcast. It's called We Watch Movies. It's actually a podcast that has been, for now, I think he's going on 5 years, debating the merits of flatheads versus Phillip head screws. It is a apparently contentious debate. It's been going on for 5 years.
How could anyone argue for the flathead screw?
I'm telling you, you would be surprised. Some people are really behind it. I think they all listen to vinyl too. All right, for AV Rant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
After party will be starting in a little bit, gentlemen, and perhaps ladies. Who knows?